All right, everyone ready? 1, 2, 3, clap.
No Putts Given is powered by MyGolfSpy, the most extensive reviews in golf. Before you buy, MyGolfSpy. 9 million readers do it every year. Check us out.
Okay, we are officially back after a multi-week COVID-related hiatus, and this is episode number 36 of No Putts Given, the first work-from-home episode with the exception of Harry, so let's get it. We've got Adam, Chris, Tony, and Harry, and I'm Miranda, and we're going to talk everything that we've been missing since our last show. But to start off, guys, how's everyone doing?
I love pandemic life, man. This is the best. Get to spend time with the kids. Different style of school that the kids, I think, are enjoying. Still busy at work, so I couldn't ask for anything better, honestly.
I'm pulling my hair out, just to say. That's why I'm in the studio doing this and not at home.
Why, because your wife's driving you nuts?
She's driving me crazy.
I can imagine. I know her, but I tend to like her, but, you know, I get it.
Yeah.
Chris, do you have 7 daughters under the same roof during quarantine?
Yeah, it's a one-room schoolhouse, so we have 9 of us here just in general. So actually, girls done a great job, like not stepping on people's toes and that kind of stuff. But it's getting to the point where, any producers out there, you're looking for a reality TV show. I have got a couple fantastic pitches for you, and I would call it the sorority. So I've been spending a lot of time in the garage, spending a lot of time with my dog. So
speaking of dogs, Tony, how's it going?
I mean, it's good here. It's a little weird having my wife home all day long. That takes some getting used to. I mean, I work from home all the time. Rough fun. Oh, come on. Dog's all tangled up in the mic. Hold on a second. Lenny. Dog is obviously getting big, the puppy. Science class around here for the kid is helping out with the measuring of golf balls. So we're staying busy, I guess you could say.
Well, speaking of the pandemic and everything that's going on, it's most absolutely affecting golf, the industry. Courses are closing, manufacturers aren't going to work. And Tony, I know you put out an article not too long ago, but even since then, things have changed. It looks like it's the big manufacturers that are being hit the hardest, right?
To an extent. I mean, they're feeling it now because sales are virtually non-existent. Hopefully that'll tick up a little bit here as things start to open up a little bit. But the bigger issue, kind of the long-term problem, is you have all of this inventory, essentially 3 months of peak selling season inventory that hasn't been touched. And so to kind of get where they need to be at the end of the year, they're going to have to make some hard choices from a pricing perspective and figure out how to unload the inventory in time for 2021 product, or potentially, although I don't think it's likely, decide to carry over products for an additional year. And so, you look at TaylorMade, Callaway, for example, fully loaded with 2020 product, and you still have Ping, and on the other end of it, you have Ping and Titleist at the end of their cycles, who are, Ping has already said they're going to hold product until 2021. Titleist is probably going to do the same. So the stuff that we probably would have otherwise seen in the summer and fall isn't going to come this year either. So
could be worse. I mean, like the beer companies are having to dump all those kegs out, the milk's having to be dumped out. Golf clubs are just sitting there collecting dust, waiting for golfers to pick them up when they get back.
Yeah, but I mean, you're not going to scrap them, but you're going to do heavy discounts or BOGOs or a combination. So it's going to be really intriguing when we get kind of closer to the other end of this thing to see. Yeah, I think discounts are a given. My only question is how much. So
I don't know. I think it's interesting, right? Like you've got companies that are laying people off, furloughing people, but you've got companies that, Callaway's laid off 100 plus employees, furloughed 300 plus employees. TaylorMade, Titleist, everyone's furloughing a lot of employees and letting some people go.
Anybody
right?
without all the assembly plant guys, right? Or anybody who can't do their job remotely. You can't really assemble golf clubs from home, right? So
But there's also companies that are doing really well right now. You take putting green companies, hitting net companies, push cart companies. These 3 types of products and the companies behind them are seeing record sales for no other reason than the pandemic, right? So there's good and bad. And I also think coming out of this, there is going to be good coming out of this. It's going to clean some of the fluff out. It's going to force people to sharpen their axe a little bit, shine their star a little bit differently. I think the people that are outside the box thinkers are going to come out of this stronger. I mean, I think PXG is a good example.
Would you describe PXG as a mid-sized golf company?
Well,
Sorry,
inside joke. But no, PXG, I think, was built for this more than most people. So when they started, their distribution channel wasn't as much green grass in the retail stores, which the industry kind of fought, right? They didn't, they wanted to take care of their pro shops and their professionals and sell through a lot of retail chains. But ultimately, they weren't prepared for this, which is built for direct sales, right? And PXG immediately saw an opportunity, I think, and discounted clubs. They rose the price up here. Yeah. They rose the price up here, and they made everybody come up to them, and then they just dropped the price to half off. And all those other companies are sitting there going, holy shit, like PXG is moving a lot of product right now from what I hear. And all the other companies are freaking the fuck out right now. I mean, we're talking to companies and you can hear it in their voice. They don't know what's going to be left of their company coming out of this, many of them. And PXG seems to be totally good to go.
Well, Adam, one of those companies is Callaway, right? One of the biggest names in golf. Callaway's really hurting.
100%. I mean, from what I'm hearing, and the people we've talked to, like I said, one, you hear it in their voice. They had bought a company basically for a lot of money that isn't panning out as well. And also, it seems like it was financed. So you got to pay those bills like rent. And there's not a lot of money coming in right now to pay those bills. So coming out of this, a company that had done pretty much everything right for close to 5 to 7 years is coming out of this maybe in a lot of trouble, And you hear it not only in the people that you talk to that they let go that you speak to, but you hear it from the people that are still currently there.
Well, and I think to me, that's one of the more interesting parts of this there's the minutia, the day-to-day of, okay, this company laid off X amount of people and the numbers and do products carry over or not. What I'm more interested to see, I think, are some of these structural changes, right? So I think what you're talking, the structure of a more direct-to-consumer platform as opposed to certain retail channels. And think about it from like the fitting side, chatting with the people, like right away, we didn't talk about this a ton, but like Club Champion was one of the people laid off a ton of people right away. And some people I spoke with felt like they maybe even jumped the gun a little bit. But when you look at their structure, they have a lot of brick and mortar stores, right? That's how they operate. Compare that to somebody else like a True Spec where they more or less lease space at a lot of green grass accounts. In most of the contracts with leases, if that place is shut down, you're not paying your rent. You don't have to. So if I'm leasing from a golf course and they're shut down, I'm not sitting there with a store that I have to pay for.
Great point, Chris. So it really depends on how are you doing during this pandemic, depends on how your company is structured and built, right? So Precisely. People that are a little bit skinnier or leaner and meaner, they're seeing this as an opportunity, right? The companies that were not built for this, that had a lot of overhead, I think we're going to see some real big changes. And I think it's going to force the hand on golf. Retail has been broken for decades. I mean, it's just the golf consumer is not taken care of properly, in my opinion, at big box retail. And I think there might be some shifts that happen because of this,
Well, Tony, you've alluded to this. Some of the leaner companies might be at risk as things get back to quote unquote normal if the bigger OEMs liquidate, right?
Yeah, that's certainly right. It's, there are small brands who have positioned themselves as value brands to an extent. So, if I'm going to give you some examples, I think Sub 70 qualifies. Tour Edge, a name most golfers know, qualifies. The new Ben Hogan, kind of that revamped Ben Hogan qualifies. It's not to say people buy their products exclusively for value, but probably the most attractive piece of any of those brands in the marketplace is that their price tag is so far below the industry leaders. So if you have if you're selling your driver for, say $300, right, and Callaway is at $5, that $200 is a big deal. If things get as bad as I think they could, I don't think, I think a Maverick's minimum $399. It's possibly $350. So at that point, Now it's $50 between what you were looking at and what is considered to be one of the top drivers on the market. You're probably going to overcome that. And the reality is those smaller brands typically operate on razor thin margins. So cutting their prices to go even farther below the other guys isn't really an option. So
you want to hear about something that's going to be interesting coming out of this? Is Costco is ready to pounce, and they're going to be coming out with golf balls that, from what I hear, aren't even named the same thing.
Will the covers stay on?
They're not going to be available even at Costco. They're going to be sold in different stores. They're coming out with a putter called the KS1 in June. They're coming out with wedges. And from what I hear, they're interested in going the full bag when this comes out. So they see this as an opportunity. One, they know that they can manufacture golf equipment if they go through the right people, and they've already got immediate distribution channels. Two, they cannot be beat at price, period. Meaning Kirkland Signature stuff is what's called a loss leader. They don't make profit off that. They use those to gain, subscription, people coming through and paying their subscriptions, right? So these putters are going to be rock bottom price. These wedges are going to be rock bottom price. They see this as an opportunity to come out there with golf equipment that can compete with the name brands at a price that no one can compete with.
So I was gonna say that's my question, and Harry, maybe you thought about this too, or others, like where does this then start to reset potentially the expectation around what constitutes a fair price? I mean, if these big companies can all of a sudden, slash prices, do whatever the case is, and go down to $3.99, $3.49, does that reset my expectations as a consumer as to what's a reasonable price to pay? Saying, hey, if you could charge $3.49 for it last year, are you going to be able to come back in 2021 and go back to $5.29, $5.49?
We shall see, right?
I think there's if that is the case, they're gonna see a drop in their sales, because if they can sell it, like Chris said, for $3.99 and they go up to $5.49, I don't think people are they're just gonna go from last year's product.
There was one high up exec at a big golf company that basically put it pretty quickly. Who the f is going to buy $500 drivers coming out of this?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I haven't really seen a pandemic, to be honest, in the soft goods industry. It's absolutely been blowing up just by looking at it.
But that's interesting because golf courses are packed. That's a different story. So golf is almost split in half right now. The golf courses are packed, but the golf retail stores are closed, right? So golfers still need stuff like push carts, and they're at home, so they need putting greens and they want nets. But golf club sales are non-existent right now in regards to hard goods like drivers through putters.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of like the overall participation in the game coming out of this, because like you said, like courses are legitimately packed right now. At least in my area, rounds played I would assume are up, because I keep I'm in the loop. I get emails, I see what's going on, and I mean courses that are typically booked from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and then wide open in the afternoon are now saying, hey, our first available tee time is 3 o'clock, and that's pretty consistent all over the place. And the reason that's happening is, right, it's really the only thing you can do short of going for a bike ride or going for a hike, climbing a mountain, something like that. And the kind of the thing is, I thought through like, where are all these people coming from? Kids aren't playing sports right now at all, right? And they don't have extracurriculars and other activities to go to. There's no birthday parties. There's none of that stuff.
No team sports.
That takes us all away from the golf course as parents. And so, it's not only is it all you can do, it's an opportunity you haven't had in years.
You know what? That's a great point, Tony, because golf was a sport that when we were younger was, sports were divided. You played baseball, then you played football, then you played basketball, right? Now sports are such year-round. There's so many alternatives for kids to play so many things when they get home from school on a daily basis. Golf became something that was not as prioritized to play, right? And now, I think you're right. I think it might grow after this,
Yeah, it's a pandemic-friendly sport, and there's not that many that are. People are reevaluating what activities work and in what context. And, a couple of my daughters play soccer and their seasons have been put on hold, et cetera. And so one of them actually asked me, he said, hey, Dad, can we go play golf tomorrow? I was like, yeah, let me get my work done and we'll go see. But yeah, I mean, it's something that we can go do together, and I don't have to worry about some of these other things and scheduling and this, that, and whatever. it's super nice to be able to do that. So
yeah, you definitely might see a younger generation come up, and this might be the older generations where it's dying, but the younger generations, because of this pandemic, they might have not picked up a golf club.
Hey, you know what's funny about that? They've been trying to grow golf all this time with all these like initiatives. It's the best way to grow golf is to have a pandemic.
Yeah,
Right.
It might be because that might be the way that it kicks forward, and you never know. You might see an influx of golf junior clubs or whatever it is.
So you don't need 15-inch cups like to putt into to grow the game.
How about
Maybe.
that? Yeah, I mean, what to me is the big unknown. Everybody's playing now, but is it sustainable, right? What happens when life goes back to quote normal, end quote, and then does golf kind of go back right to where it was before we kind of restarted or press the pause button on day-to-day life, or are there going to be a significant number of people who are coming out of the pandemic going, man, that was really fun, I enjoyed that, now I'm going to go spend money on new equipment?
When do you see normal coming back? Honestly,
I don't know if we ever really get totally back to
what's normal? I
think in terms of if normal was what things looked like last year, for example, I think you write off this year entirely. And for golf, it's obviously how soon is retail semi-normal so that companies can start selling clubs and start paying employees again and things like that. I mean, to me, it was crazy talking to the guys at Titleist. The ball plants are shut down, so which makes perfect sense within the larger scope. But this idea that like there's a very real possibility that Titleist golf balls could run out of inventory on store shelves and not be able to replenish them. So that's true for everybody who makes balls in the USA, especially. So
does Union Green get to stay open since there was only like one guy and he can social distance?
Well, that's a Acushnet, so
Damn it.
But do you think this pandemic has maybe set a precedent of having contingency plans for something like this, whatever it may be? I mean, this was somewhat unpredictable on the grand scale. Do you think companies will now have this in mind going forward as they make financial decisions and other types of decisions?
I don't see how you don't.
I can tell you one person's life that ain't gonna change, and that's Tony Covey's. He's going to be sitting right there.
It's I think from an economic standpoint, Miranda, it's a good question because that's what we are. And we're not going to get into a political stance on some of these things, but we're reactionary, right? We tend to do better. There's more will, effort, energy when something happens to respond to it. So, of course, I think every company is going to have plans around what do we do if we can't do A, B, or C. I think you might see people put into place some of those contingency plans more permanently, like is there a percentage of people that could work from home 1 day a week, even 2 days a week? Things that they found, hey, this is actually better for us in some ways. So not even just contingency plans, but how do we change maybe some of what we're doing anyway that we found out throughout this was actually a little bit better, a little bit more efficient.
Well, the pandemic has directly affected MyGolfSpy. MyGolfSpy's backbone is testing, and of course, that was shut down in mid to early March. Harry, what's the facility been like without testers coming through a revolving door every day?
It's been very isolating, to put it that way. I mean, I am busy doing my soft goods, but I don't see another human being until I go home. So for me, it's a little bit... It's disheartening because I want to see all my testers come in and I want to get through the testing because I get to see certain trends going on within the industry. That's just through the hard goods testing. So on that side, it's kind of sad, but I'm busy doing all my soft goods testing as of now.
And actually, because of the pandemic, the testing schedule changed. You put a couple of emergency tests into the rotation early, right?
Here's a bunch of stuff you want and can't buy because it's all sold out.
Yes, exactly. But when they do replenish the stocks, this is what you can go buy. But putting mats and push carts and hitting nets were like on top of everyone's list to try and get hold of, because when you go on a golf course now, you can only walk, and if you don't carry your bag, then push cart's your next option. So those three were pretty important for us to get out there and test as many products as we can, because I've tried to get products in there with bigger names, but you just can't get hold of them. Even the manufacturers who supplied them are sold out and can't send any and they can't get a hold of any more. So
they didn't even make it into the tests.
we couldn't, because there was none. It was the gold dust. There was none out there.
Yeah, Birdie Ball. I mean, Birdie Ball's an hour and a half or so from me, and I offered to drive up there and pick up whatever. And
I mean, that was my my thing. I phoned you up, Chris, and said, "Hey, look, we can't get it here in time. Can you pick it up? And I'll show you through the protocols." And it was just not. We just couldn't do it. So it's just reality at the moment.
Yeah. So for everybody out there that was screaming and yelling at us for not testing these products, we did try, but it is a pandemic.
It was amazing to me when, fortunately we were able to get them in and test, but double checking some stuff and doing the editing on the pushcart buyer's guide to go to the Click Gear website and see that every single model they sell is sold out. Like, just kind of gives you a sense of where everybody's gravitating to. And one thing I do wonder, right, if I'm not going to say that I closely track my budget for every one of my interests, but if you are somebody who says, hey, I spend, my budget for golf equipment this year is X, and you unexpectedly have to drop 200 plus on that on a push cart, for example, is that one less piece of equipment you're going to buy elsewhere?
Well, it's a good thing as well that that there is no price gouging on those, because they could sell those for like $1,000 and people would buy them.
Well, yeah, and I was talking with the national distributor for them. I said, trying to get an idea of what their growth was at and everything. He said, here's the problem. We have the next two containers that are coming in, 40-foot long containers, whatever. They're already allocated. They're already sold. He said, I literally have one push cart in our warehouse, and it's a pink one. I was like, well, I'll take it. I want it. But, sold. But the point was that I said, how, percentage-wise compared to last year over year, how much are you guys' sales up? And he's like, didn't really want to tell me a whole lot. But the point was, they have no idea. They could be up as much as they could possibly. They don't have enough product. They
don't have time to count the money. They don't have time to count the cash.
No. I mean, if they drop a $100 bill, and I mean, they're losing money to stop and pick it up, right, at this point, because everything's just going so fast. They can't fulfill enough orders to realize their full growth. That's crazy.
Harry, can we talk about some of the specific products? You did a hitting net test, a putting mat test, and a push cart test. What were some of the winners from those three things that are pandemic related?
Well, the putting mats, Big Moss was the number one, but again, we couldn't test one of the biggest ones in the industry, which is Birdie Ball. So once we get all of them in and this pandemic has settled down, I can get products in, and then I can add to the buyer's guides that we already done. So for now, it's Big Moss for the putting green. There was one pretty cool one called the Perfect Putt, where it has a little ramp and it feeds all the way back down. And that was a quick green. So if you wanted to replicate your green, if it's a quick, say, 11 on a stent meter, that's a perfect putting mat for it.
Perfect putt.
There you go, pun intended. And then you come to hitting nets, and we managed to get pretty much all of them apart from a couple of brands, which
Rocket
is a big one that everyone screamed and yelled about when we published the article, even though we put a disclosure in there and said cannot get all of them.
Hey Harry, people don't read anymore, man.
Yeah, I know. I've never read anything in my life.
If we put a picture that said, "Hey, look here," they might have seen it.
Yeah. So the winner on that one was the net returner. I mean, it's a great product, but I personally, my editor's choice would have been the
Spornia.
The what? Sorry, what was it?
Spornia.
Unbelievable! I can't even say that word either.
Somebody else say it one more time. Somebody.
Spornia, right, with an S.
Yeah.
This is the guy that tests your products, folks.
But this product was pretty sweet. I mean, if you're indoors, all the ones that I tested was so loud it actually deafens your ear. But this one has like a muted sound when going in, and it just feeds back straight to you. So that was a huge plus for those who want to do it inside. Plus, you can take that outside, and it's a good size with nets on the side. So if you're shanking it like me in the off season, it's going to catch it and not break a window.
And push carts. What about those? That was the most recent one.
Push carts, we got a lot of the top name brands in that one, and the Rovic RV1S
It's a click gear.
Yeah, under the click gear umbrella. But we can't really say that because I got told off. So it's Rovic RV1S. That is it's just a great model. I mean, you got the 360 front wheel that you get to change direction whenever you want, and it's got the durability of a click gear because it's
a Rovic.
Why would it?
It's like Union Green all over again.
I mean, if you're going to invest money in push carts, it's either click gear, bag boy, or if you want the size component, like to get into something small, the Big Macs are probably the 3 best options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when it comes to it, there is companies out there. If you have a junior, for instance, that is perfect coming into the industry and wanting to join the game, they have junior models out there if they want to put it on there. So Bag Boy and Click Gear had a good one. Apart from that, go read the article. You can see what was good and what was bad.
Have you talked to any of the manufacturers of all these things that are sold out indefinitely? Do they have target dates for when they'll have more in stock at all?
I've spoken to some and they don't even know because the manufacturers that they got their product from is not operational right now. So they can't get an estimate on when it's going to be returned. So
how about you, Chris? Did you have any updates like that?
I mean, mid-May is, what they said a couple weeks ago when we were chatting, and so we'll see. Like I said, part of that is there's going to be so much pent-up demand depending on people that had orders, whether they kept those orders, backed out of those orders, or revised them. If they did, then, certain amounts already allocated and spoken for. But that would mean that those tend to be larger accounts, right? Like a PJ Superstore or Dick's Golf Galaxy or something, where then it would be back in stock at those locations. So, if I were a bet man, I'd say third week in May. Probably, you'll see some more availability, but April, obviously, first part of May is going to be pretty thin.
So what's next, Harry? What are you testing now?
I am testing a lot of products at the same time. I've tested stand bags and cart bags, and I'm moving on to Sunday bags and spiked and spikeless shoes.
Hey, Harry, which one are you most excited about?
Test-wise?
Yeah.
I did get excited the other day on the stand bags.
Wait a second. You were telling me shoes is what you're all jacked up
Well, I
about.
did. I'm excited about the shoes, but then when I was testing the bags, I was kind of excited about product. The companies have changed their design. I couldn't believe that they got better.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. What is the best product that you like personally since you've been testing since the pandemic? Coolest thing?
Coolest thing? I would say a hitting net, just because you get to practice inside without swinging and breaking everything.
And
Wait, explain this to me, though. You said a hitting net was loud. What makes it loud?
The backboard. Backboard, pretty much. So when it hit the material, if it's like a sheet, it just goes into it and it just makes a huge sound. But if it's a cloth material, if you think about it like a bed or a sheet, and it hits into it, it's compacting and muted sound.
By the way, let's update this for everybody because a lot of people have gone out and bought hitting nets and screens after our test, and I've gotten a lot of email and feedback from people going, man, this is a shitty golf ball. It cracked, So just so everybody understands out there, it's not the actual ball that has the problem. When the ball, especially on high spin shots, when it hits a screen, that quick stopping power actually causes the ball to crack over time.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that some balls are more durable than others, and once upon a time this wouldn't have been a consideration, right? Because like, who hits a golf ball several hundred times with a driver, right? Or something like that. So usually, sort of real world fatigue hasn't been a realistic concern, but as more and more guys are putting simulators into their house or buying hitting nets, anything that causes the ball to stop abruptly puts fatigue on it. And so, yeah, this is kind of a new avenue in golf ball durability where people are sending us pictures and saying, hey, what is this? Is this the ball? What's going on? And you're like, oh, it's a small degree it's the ball. Maybe another ball would have lasted a little bit longer, but ultimately it's that abrupt stop that's doing the damage.
Don't hit it so hard.
There you go.
All right, Adam, I want to revisit something that you touched on earlier in the podcast, but Costco is really sneaking in there with a new line of wedges and putters and the golf ball. I want to get more into detail about what you know about the Costco situation post-pandemic.
I mean, don't know a whole lot. I mean, like I said, we've talked to a couple sources there, and from what I hear, a couple things that seem to be true are that they are serious about getting into golf space. Two, I heard that there was going to be a new ball, and it will not be called the Kirkland Signature. It will be called something else. And from what I was also told, it will not even be sold in Costco, which is interesting. My assumption there is that if they want, people go to Costco for deals, right? I mean, everybody knows people that shop at Costco, 5 gallons of mayonnaise, whatever you need to get. But people are going there for deals. The hardcore golfer does not go to Costco looking for high performance golf equipment. My thought would be, and this is just an assumption, like I said, that if they start to test the waters outside of the Costco shelving space, they could potentially have a new distribution channel for a brand that is not necessarily named Kirkland Signature that could be sold in both places, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And the serious golfer would potentially take them more seriously. And that's not who's walking through Costco. So the other thing is, I heard they were going to come out with a 3 wedge set, a putter in June, and then they are debating on whether or not to come out with drivers and irons.
Now, we saw a picture of the putter. It is a Kirkland brand, the KS1, right? But you said it looked eerily reminiscent of another putter currently on the market.
Yeah, the people that make the ball do not make the putter for Costco. So SM Global, I think, Tony, are they still going to be the ones tied in with the ball, correct?
Yeah, so I mean, they're SM. It's kind of a weird situation. So SM Global's basically a logistics company, import, export, that sort of thing. They kind of manage the relationships.
Seinfeld.
Yeah, Vandalay Industries.
Exactly.
But a division of SM Global, if you will, called SM Parker, owns the ball plant in China that used to be called Phantom. So, I don't want to say it's a top tier factory. It's probably tier 2. And that's the factory that has produced some of the Costco balls. But so that company is deeply entrenched with Costco, and this is, from what I understand, in the process of opening up a new ball plant in Vietnam, which would represent significant cost savings over China. So I think when we talk about the golf ball piece of Costco's larger golf strategy, the ability to trim prices by shifting to Vietnam is going to be a big part of it.
Yeah, and it will be for profit. It won't be a lost leader type situation from the ball. But the putter was not manufactured or made by them. It was made by a different design group. And that looks to be Odyssey, from the looks of the putter.
And the weights. I mean, you look at the weights, the configuration, a couple of the things, there's some pretty solid hints in there.
Okay, so that's some things that consumers, again, are winning at the end of the pandemic. They're getting cost-effective golf balls, putters, while they're shopping for their bulk chips or whatever else it may be.
As long as the covers stay on the golf ball and the faces stay in the putters.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it going to be the same quality as the Kirkland? Because I know they've recalled their last manufacturer of balls, and anything that Costco does, the quality is normally like top-notch. So,
yeah, I mean, the quality of the first kind of that 4-piece Kirkland Signature that kind of set the golf world on fire.
Great.
That ball, the quality of that ball is going to be really, really tough to match because, kind of the engineering team behind the design, cast urethane cover, these are things that ultimately made for a better ball. The kind of that second generation 4-piece that literally fell apart was, injected urethane from a company that doesn't have a lot of experience with that, and there looked to be some chemistry problems. So, to resolve that and get things right with a brand new factory out of the gate, certainly not impossible. I'm just going to say it's going to be interesting to watch and see what the quality and consistency of that product is.
Oh, kind of like TPT, which is just come out with a new shaft line. Both had manufacturing issues, and they have one opportunity to get it right. And if they screw it up this time, either Costco with the ball or TPT, I think it will be their last shot at those two products.
Chris, can you tell us a little bit more about the TPT Red Range? It's the new line of shafts that are coming out.
Yeah, so really, just kind of brief recap. TPT hit the market not that long ago. Not that many people had heard, much about them. Really, their differentiating technology. The idea was being that it was a fully automated process, and so some people think that handcrafted or hand rolling, table rolling golf shafts is kind of a unique or special thing. That's pretty much the way it's been done for the last give or take 3 decades. And so their process was totally different by everybody.
It's not a one-off.
So let's drive that home. Like when you see handcrafted or hand rolled, that is fancy words like limited edition to make something sound better than it is. That's standard operating procedure for making a shaft, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like if I were to say, "Oh, I hand rolled my vacuum cleaner through my carpet,"
or your burrito. You hand rolled your burrito, right?
All day, every day.
It's the only way to do it.
So TPT kind of taking a different approach, right? So they're big in sales, Formula One racing, these kind of things using carbon composites.
When he says sales, he means like yachting.
Yes, yachting, like boat racing. And long story short, they came out to the market, had a club or had a shaft that was very volatile, right? I mean, the history was volatile. There were a lot of highs and a couple lows. People, Jason Day, Lydia Ko, Justin Rose when he went on his torrid streak, and Bryson DeChambeau. People won with their shafts in the bag, and the shaft world's weird. Like there's oddly even more kind of political type bizarre things in order to get get shafts in play on tour. Reading that political landscape, and they went from a total outsider to shafts in play on major tours in the bags of some of the best players in the world that also went on to win with those shafts in their bag. So, I mean, their ascension was like, it was crazy.
Probably in context from a literal nobody to winning on tour more than once in more than one player bag faster than any product I've seen in the decade plus I've been doing this. All
right, but what's the difference? What's the difference between these guys and another Fujikura or whatever or manufacturer?
Well, so that's what we're getting to, I think, with the Red Range is that there was an inherent problem, and the one thing a shaft can't do is break. And their shaft started to break. Some of it in testing. Tony and I both experienced that. And people, some of them were breaking in lab situations, and part of the problem was John Senden snapped one during live television that, from what we were told, that shaft should have never made it out there. That
was somebody pulled a shaft out of essentially a pile of known defective shafts, not aware that it was pulling out of
Well, they did have more defective shafts than most people, so the pile was
too big to begin with, and it shouldn't have made it out there. But the problem was, once you start to have that reputation, right, that's a really tough thing to potentially overcome. Like Samsung's phones when they started setting on fire.
Yeah, pros aren't going to trust that out on tour.
No, so they figured out what the problem was.
Was it a quality issue, or was it just that somebody pulled from the wrong?
No, manufacturing. It was a manufacturing issue.
They've owned it.
I mean, when you make something new, there's a learning curve, right? And I think no one would say that they don't make a quality shaft. I think there was just a learning curve to what they were doing, and I think they'll get it right this time. And I think the fact that Titleist, what did you say, Tony, in the article? I mean, Titleist has the most rigorous, testing of products.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So nothing goes into a Titleist club without being rigorously tested. So if you're shaft company A, right, and you've got a new model and you want not just to carry it as stock, but if you want Titleist to potentially sell it as an upgrade or something like that, you've got to pass the Titleist quality control check process, whatever you want to call it. They do it with grips, they do it with shafts. Again, anything they attach to a club. And when they showed it to me, I was like, man, this is pretty extreme. I've never seen anything like this to this extent with the other manufacturers I've visited. So when I came home, I made a few phone calls, called some shaft guys, talked to some grip guys too, and was like, hey, are any manufacturers harder to work with in terms of getting product in their lineup to anybody else than the other guys? And to a man, they said Titleist. And so seeing that process and seeing some of the stuff that didn't make it through and why it didn't make it through, I've become just in a big sense a firm believer in if Titleist doesn't carry it, there's a good reason and it's reason enough for you not to want it. And so, to put all of this in the context of TPT, with the original blue LKP series, which was the one predominantly in play on tour, the ones that Chris and I broke, the one that they had issues with, that one didn't make it through the Titleist qualifying process. And
Not even close.
Wasn't close. Yeah. And so, Titleist has, in this case, particularly weeded out a bad product, or at least a product that had potential issues. And so, TPT says, hey, yeah, we made it through Titleist with both the high and low in the red range. And so I reached out and I said, hey, can you confirm this? And they're like, yeah, no, they're good to go with this stuff. To me, that's at least a huge positive to say that at least the quality piece, right? Take the performance discussion off of the table. If a shaft fits you, great. If there's TPT's not going to fit everybody, that's not realistic. But to at least know that, hey, now this shaft is in the marketplace and breakage and durability shouldn't be an issue.
Let's get to the part that golfers would probably care more about. Obviously they don't expect products to break and they shouldn't, but once they get over the fact that a product is out on the market and it's not breaking, what are the advantages that potentially a golfer would see performance-wise with a TPT shaft versus another big name brand shaft, Chris?
Yep. So 3 things really to just distill it down to that. So the idea is that in general, there's a trade-off between how a shaft feels and maximizing ball speed. So if we take these things independent of one another, that sometimes a shaft that feels softer, has higher torque, might allow you to get a little bit more ball speed, but that tends to come at the expense of accuracy. What they're trying to do with the TPT Red range is mitigate some of that opportunity cost. So, point of fact, what they're saying you can do is better players can hit the ball further, get a little more ball speed without sacrificing accuracy, and have the shaft feel a little bit better. So that's point 1. Point 2 is that particularly, so they have two models to it, high and low. The high model is going to be geared more toward players that you might, generally lower swing speed players who typically they get kind of trickle down or watered down technology in a lot of shaft manufacturer lineups.
Yeah, there's next to no premium offerings in that space, right? We get it all the time when we post shaft reviews. Typically the aftermarket stuff, the expensive stuff, which talks about quality and performance benefits and has all of that stuff to the story, excludes the slower swing speed player because it relies on exotic materials to stiffen it up and do all these things that slower swing speed players don't necessarily need.
Yep, so that's not the case here. It's the same process, same manufacturing process, same materials, same everything, just built, designed, and engineered specific to people with those swing characteristics. So the way I thought of it was kind of like, remember the first time I saw a little kid walking around with an authentic pair of like Air Jordan shoes, where it was like in size 3, it was the same mesh, the same air pocket, the same everything, just built for this little kid, right? And they still cost, $80, $90 or whatever. Same case here, though. The shafts are not cheap. They're $500 a pop, which means they're not going to be.
Damn, that shaft rack behind you is worth some do-re-mi, Tony.
Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen, you may not see it in OEM lineups because it would be a $500 upcharge. I mean, you might be paying more for the shaft than the driver head. It's going to be through retail channels, through Club Champion, through select fitters and locations like that. So I wouldn't necessarily expect to see it like in Titleist lineup, even though it did pass all of their durability tests. It's probably going to be a pretty niche product for at least for the foreseeable future, and we'll see. Maybe they can scale up production and get to a point where that price point comes down a little bit. But for right now, it's a lot of dollar bills on the wall behind Tony.
All right, well let's talk about how does it actually play. For me, when I'm deciding what shaft to put in there, I want to feel the layers and I want to feel where the club is at all times. Does it feel like it's just a one piece and a plank of wood, or if you tip it, does it change the actual function of the shaft? Like how does it play?
So that's first of all, so I haven't had a chance to hit these yet, so I can't tell you kind of my perception of how it feels. But what's interesting about the way the TPT shaft lineup works, there's no flexes on it. So this is So the model closest to me is a Model 16 low, and I would have to look at the website.
Why
to tell
do
you what
that? That's
is,
so
but-
confusing. What is the point?
because it's a product that is designed to be custom fit, right? It's designed to be bought at a Cool Clubs or a TXG by somebody who's really going to work.
Well, put it this way: we
in.
complain about everybody calling something stiff, right?
Right.
They're not doing that. They are doing this probably in a maybe not easier to understand way, but for a custom fitting way, probably better.
Right, because
yeah,
Tony walks in and says, hey, you're a 70X, and goes into his fitting and say, hey, I've been a 70X for as long as I know. I go into the store and I say, yeah, I need a 36, 32 pant. And they say, yeah, we don't do that in BTW, not a 36. But they say, they go, we have sizes, 1 through, or A, B, C, D, E. What are you? I say, I don't know. And that removes that part of the conversation. My preconceived notions around, I play an X, I play a stiff, I'm a 60 this, blah, blah, blah. I can go on there in a monitor, and they say, okay, 16, 17, 18, and we start looking at the different numbers that those produce, and all of a sudden, I'm getting fit now based on data, feedback, etc. I don't care if it's a 16, because a 16 doesn't attack my manhood the way that a regular does.
The numbers on the shafts aren't for you; they're for the fitters.
Right, okay.
Whereas if you're a guy who says, I play a 60S, and a fitter hands you a 50R or some equivalent
yeah,
of
you get to
that's
subconsciously think
yeah,
it's...
you're going to be like, I don't care. Like, no matter how good those numbers are, you're going to leave there wondering.
Yeah, we know golfers have no clue what they actually need. And they come in telling you what they think they need. And what we see from a data perspective sometimes goes totally contrary to that. So that, like Chris said, removing that part of the discussion puts it on the fitter and gets them a better product without them having the preconceived notion that it's the wrong product when they go out there on the course and swing it. They want to take the golfer out of the equation and make it about the right fit rather than what people think it might be.
Yeah, it's just like, get out of your own head and find the shaft that works.
Yeah, and more importantly, the golfer's ego. Because I'm not walking out of that shop with a pair of pants. If it says 40 on it, I'm not buying them. I don't care if it fits or not. Just like I'm not walking out if it says, if it's a 60X, come on, man. I'm a man. I got to be at least a stiff, if not an extra stiff.
I mean, if you knew how many people that when I did more of a fitting part of my career that came in and said, I needed a stiff or an extra stiff that swung at 75 miles an hour. And that happened every single day. And this eliminates that. And by the way, we need to have an intro to this section this is for shaftoids only, period. We have gone way down a TP trail.
I was going to say, you were speaking in a language that I understood about that much of.
Yeah, this is shaftoids only right here, fellas.
But if you're spending $500 on a shaft, you better be some level of shaftoid.
I look at it totally differently. People that go into Club Champion and pay $1,200 for a damn driver, they don't know shit about driver shafts. But TPT is a good option for them,
That's
true. but the point is, right, given just in general, if you're going to spend $500 on something like a shaft where there is a component of, hey, this may or may not fit you, if you're essentially at best flipping a coin, you're probably rolling a 12-sided die or something like that more realistically. I would say, hey, go to a TXG or a Cool Clubs or a Club Champion True Spec somewhere, get properly fit. But I say that also fully aware that there are pockets of the country in which we live that going and getting fit for these shafts isn't an option. And so for that guy who almost has to roll the dice on an eBay offering, if you will, I guess in that respect, it's TPT's a little bit more complicated.
But they do that anyway when they go out and see a driver marketed and be like, hey, that's a great driver, I'm going to go buy that one. And it's a lottery ticket.
It's a lot of money to not make sure you get the right product.
Golfers been playing lottery tickets for forever. There's a lot of scratch off loser clubs that they bought off.
I did until I came into MyGolfSpy.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how short you hit the ball for how hard you swung when you first came to MyGolfSpy. That was
285 to 300.
Driver swing speed of 125 and hitting at 280.
That's embarrassing.
What was your spin when you first started? 5,000 with the driver, right?
It was 3,500 range.
Jeez.
There was definitely some 5,000ers in there.
Well, that's with a flex that just kicks.
Hey, Chris,
this.
he's not Andre 5,000. He's Harry 5,000.
He's Harry 5,000. Exact little outcast action, which makes me. Yeah, it's funny when you're talking about the k-sig putter or the KS1. Is that what they call it? All I could think about was KRS-One, and I don't know if anybody else had that issue, but that's me. Knowledge reigns supreme. That's what it stands for. Little hip hop history of the day.
I needed that. That might not be a bad note to end on. Hip hop history of the day.
Are we not going to talk about Ball Lab at all? You motherfuckers! I have spent hours taking Sharpies and marking golf balls and
Look what
reasoning.
shirts we made him wear.
Miranda, tee it up for Tony so he can go off.
So, Tony, you've set up a pandemic in-home golf ball test lab, right?
Yeah, well, we planned it before the pandemic, but I guess you could say it's the pandemic is giving me a little more time to get going. Yeah, so we are. I guess kind of the backstory. We've talked about this before. Condensed version. During the ball test last year, we saw some really weird stuff, and some of it we were able to explain by cutting balls open. But coming out of that, we really wanted to kind of better understand what are the differences between golf balls. Who makes a quality product, a consistent product, that sort of thing. And so we've invested, for us, a decent chunk of money in some gauges and some tooling that will allow us to measure golf balls for compression, size, weight, some other things as well we're finding. And so I've spent the better part of the last couple of weeks marking balls because we need to measure at 3 points on each one and then running them through the gauges. It's time consuming, but it's already proven to be interesting to say the least with some of the stuff.
Let me ask you a question, Tony. What do you think consumers can expect to learn? Let's try to retrospectively look back. Like it's 2 years now away from us doing Ball Lab stuff. And obviously you did predict that the TaylorMade driver was going to be number one Golfstradamus, but I know you can't predict everything, but if you were to predict what people are going to learn out of Golf Lab, what would be the most eye-opening things?
I think, and again, so ultimately we're going to measure 36 of everything minimum. But just kind of the early returns, like this idea that, hey, all you're paying for with a higher price ball is tour contracts. That's why they're more expensive. I can tell you right now, no, there's that is definitely not the extent of it by any stretch of the imagination. The early indications are it's just a higher quality product in those situations. Yeah, so that's one piece. Like money well spent is probably how I would suggest it. Probably the thing that I found most surprising early on, right? We think, hey, all right, a ball has a compression of 85, right? Typically, when I measure a ball in 3 places, I get a range of 1 to 2 compression points. So, equivalent of saying, hey, this ball is the same anywhere you hit it. But every now and again, I find a ball where it's 8 to 10 compression points different from one end to the other, and it's essentially like saying you have 2 balls in one. So, not just hey, if you're playing a ball and you lose it, and put a next one in play, that one might be different. You have a situation where the ball itself, a single ball, will play differently depending on where on the ball you hit it, because the compression range is so wide on a single ball. And
so like 8 to 10 compression points, what difference would that make to me if I tee it up and I hit it on one side and I hit it, whatever, and it's the other one and it's 8 to 10 different? What am I going to notice?
Well, it's going to feel different for sure. Whether or not you're able to perceive that difference depends on the golfer. People tell me that a golfer will notice a difference from somewhere between 5 and 10 compression points. So, you're probably going to feel a difference depending on if it's, there is a correlation between speed and compression. So you're going to arguably have like a slow spot or a fast spot on the ball. It's just one of those things, right? You want the ball to, and it's going to be your distances are going to be different depending on that. Not massively, but again, if you want a golf ball to be consistent, and I think you do, right? Then these kind of thing matters.
There's a couple other things. There are balls and there are manufacturers and ball brands that are more consistent than others. We know that to be true, and you're finding that to be true already. There's also brands that don't make round balls all the time.
That's exactly my point. That's the biggest thing that you're going to find is compression side is not the biggest thing. It's the not round is the biggest thing in my opinion.
This is one where the roundness thing is as we get deeper and have larger sample sizes, and we can start looking at those the 3 size measurements we take plus what we're getting out of our ring gauges. This is a situation where within the last couple days especially, and part of this is because, I'm kind of pulling boxes out of the incubator at random, and just within the last day have done some less expensive balls, kind of some two-piece stuff, some ionomer covers, and you just come to realize, you're like, son of a bitch, none of these are round. Like, where 6 of them, half of the dozen are verifiably no doubt not round. Like, we have this size gauge, and I'll bring it next time. Right? You put it in the hole, and in one orientation it drops right through, and in another it just hangs there, and you're like, yeah, I have the industrial version of that, and you're like, tink, 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 and it doesn't drop. And then you rotate it 90 degrees and it falls right through. And you see this with so many balls. And you're like, if there's one fundamental understanding that I have about a spherical object used in sports, is that it should be round. A golf ball is supposed to be round. And I'm finding an alarming percentage, particularly in lower cost models, which just aren't. So that's pretty crazy.
It's the equivalent of going to the basketball court at a shitty gym that they give you the loaner basketball, and you go to drop it down a dribble and it shoots off to the right. Doesn't come right back up to you.
I mean, I've had a couple. It'd be like dribbling a football. Maybe not to that extent.
So let me ask you real quick, Tony. Would you say that you have found that more to be true so far in direct-to-consumer balls than the bigger ball brands?
So I can't say that yet, because so far where I've seen the biggest roundness issue is in the $20 to $30 space from almost everybody across the board, with few exceptions, and those exceptions are largely probably because I haven't measured many of them yet in that space. But yeah, with the direct to consumer, again, narrow sample size, 3 dozen, and kind of the one thing that's happened in each of the 3 is there's one ball that's like 10 compression points difference from the rest. So you're like, all right, so basically I got 11 of one model and 1 of another. And obviously you don't know which one that is. And it'd be interesting to see if that trend continues as we ramp up our sample sizes again, and how much we see of that in the bigger OEM balls as well.
And because somebody will ask, we did separate and order different balls from different retail outlets, from different distribution plants, etc. So these were not sent to us by manufacturers. They weren't cherry-picked, any of that stuff.
We've purchased all of these balls at retail where possible, not always with some of the direct-to-consumer brands, and even that we've tried to spread it out. So if I can get them on Amazon, I'll get them on Amazon. If I can get them on golfballs.com, I get them on golfballs.com, and then order a dozen direct, or have somebody I know order a dozen direct. And basically the idea is we want to make sure that not only are we not dealing with samples that were sent to us, but we're also sourcing from different places, so that hopefully we're pulling balls from different batches, I guess you say.
Or just like a consumer would buy them, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like some of the more interesting stuff we'll probably test, we'll buy another dozen of later in the year to see, all right, does anything change as we go through a year? Is there a significant difference from
all right, so for golfers out there that want to see these results, when do you think the first Ball Lab results will be trickling out here?
Well, so as we said, right, when all said and done, we're going to have about 60 dozen. That'll be our first batch. And the reason we wanted to load up out of the gate is so that we kind of develop an understanding of what is normal, what is average, what is expected. So I'm hoping within a couple more weeks I'll have that first batch done. I'm averaging 5 plus or minus 5 dozen a day.
All right, so everybody out there that's listening, if you're still listening after about 3 hours of this no putts given, you tell us what kind of golf ball that you want us to put out for the first Ball Lab report, and we'll see if we can make that happen. I'm sure it's probably the Callaway Chrome Soft 2020, but if there's a runner-up, love to hear it.
Yeah, and speaking of the Callaway Chrome Soft 2020, I measured 1 dozen, have not cut them yet. Initial impressions seems relatively consistent through the dozen. Watch it, Lenny, don't eat my microphone. Dog's here. The one thing I will say, I did find 1 ball that is non-conforming within the dozen, very much undersized. And Callaway is not the only one I've found a non-conforming ball with, but certainly probably the most notable to date. And that's another one. It's like, what is the rate of balls that just aren't legal by USGA standards that are finding their way into the wild? So,
and to clarify that, a ball can be a certain size or bigger. It has to be that size. It just can't be smaller.
1.68 inches in diameter.
Right. Can't be any smaller.
Tony, really quickly, why would somebody want to make a smaller ball?
They tend to be a little bit faster, and not for anything, they say you can save a ton of material costs, right? Just
crazy to think that, right? But if you do that a million times, you save a lot of money.
Yeah, so it's and again, like I tested a dozen, I found one that was wonky. So
it's kind of like the difference between a baseball and a softball. Baseball goes further, smaller, more compact.
There you go.
I mean, there's some very kind of eye-opening, interesting things I've found already. So I think once we really get up to scale and hey, buddy, see what's going on, it's going to be particularly kind of, again, eye-opening, because this is not, and I think the perception exists out there from some people, like every time we do something like this, it's meant to be a you to the industry or a company, a specific company. And in fact, like, we find things, right? We test. That's what we do. We find things. They make us very curious, some of these findings, and so we look for explanations. And so what Ball Lab is really a way to try and find more answers from what we observed during the robot testing. And so far it's been interesting, exciting, a lot more effort in marking balls than I thought would be. Shrixon, Bridgestone, really, really appreciate it, how hard you make it to find the seam on your golf ball. That's really just a lot of fun for me. TaylorMade, Snell, Titleist, the guys who make it relatively easy.
Hey, I got a monocle I can send you, a magnifying monocle.
Oh, God.
Harry, you think Bridgestone could give you that big?
Where is it?
You think Bridgestone will give you that big magnifying glass from the PGA show?
I really hope so. That was fun.
I'd like one of those, and I'd like the jig they use for cutting the balls with the Milwaukee.
Well, look,
too.
as much as I invested in the Ball Lab, I'm sure I'd be happy to invest in a magnifying glass or a monocle.
Or what are the glasses that the surgeons wear that have the little things on the top of them? You know what I'm talking about?
Tony's got to wear that to every no putts given if that's what we buy.
It's so weird though, because I'll be playing with the ball and I'll be like, some of them I'm like 3 minutes trying to find the seam, and then next one in the box I'll pick it up and go, oh yeah, it's right here.
That seems
So it's just like
seems inefficient to me.
It's
for a really smart guy that doesn't seem very smart.
It's like it's a pattern recognition thing, and like sometimes you just pick it up at the right angle and there it is, and then other times you're like, all right, I give up.
Tony, we're glad you're having fun in the Ball Lab. We'll send you a magnifying glass. But to end this, who has a fun fact or a happy thought to send everybody off with?
I'm eating enchiladas tonight.
Ooh.
Fun fact, got a lot of great feedback on the CBD buyer's guide. A lot of people into that stuff. I'm getting tons of people asking, hey, when are you going to do this, that, whatever with it? Hang on, we got ideas.
When are you doing your real weed buyer's guide?
Well, it's coming. It's coming.
I will say this from a positive note. What I hear because I talk to all the people on the podcast and other people that work in MyGolfSpy, it's been good, and it's been a positive thing to hear. Like, yes, we're still working hard and things like that, but the impact the pandemic has had on the families that are involved with MyGolfSpy is it's been a positive thing to hear. Everybody's spending more time with their family, and I think this is forcing people. There's never been anything that's happened at the same time like this that's forced everybody to kind of maybe not just shift their priorities, but look from a different vantage point, from a different window at life. And I've definitely heard a lot of positive things come out of it from the people at MyGolfSpy and people that I'm just friends with. So I think coming out of this we're going to take some great things from it. I know I have.
I don't know. What are we, like 8 weeks, give or take, deep into this? And like every now and then it just dawned on me as we kind of go through day-to-day life in relatively closed quarters where there's really no time apart, and you're just like shit, how about that? I married the right woman.
All right.
Yep.
Good for me.
Okay, well, on that note, thanks everybody for listening and sticking with us, and we'll be back next week. So, what did we say again? Oh, God, we've been doing it away from this long enough, I forgot. We out.
We out.
We out.